Hello, I'm Rob, and welcome to the Third Factor Minis. So, for today's video, we're going to be painting and discussing Konflikt 47. Now, if you don't know what Konflikt 47 is, it is an alternate World War II historical game made by Warlord Games. I initially missed the hype around this game. It wasn't on my radar really until late last year when I picked up the War Games Illustrated magazine that had the free sprue included. And that's when it sort of like twigged in my head what this is. I did put the sprue away for a while. I wanted to check them out, but I just put it away. I was busy with Christmas at the time, and I just didn't have the time to dedicate to it. But then, eventually, I've started getting back into my historicals again. Now, I grew up loving historicals, like model kits, all the Airfix kits and things like that, and Revel. And I spent a lot of my childhood in museums, especially the Imperial War Museum in London, because that's where some of my family grew up near there. And yeah, I've just never really gone down the route of historical wargaming, like bolt action or anything like that. I don't know why. I've never dabbled in it really. I like the kits, but I've never done any like wargaming dedicated around it. Maybe because it's too on the nose about real events. I don't know. I just never have. But recently I've got into playing Hell Let Loose on the console, which is a World War II game. And also recently I've been going through all the old Wolfenstein games. I can't imagine why I've been in the mood for that. Um, and yeah, it just twigged in my head of I've got these models stashed away, and recently there was a starter kit announcement, and I think it was the Imperial Forces of Japan kit that was shown off, like a starter kit for the game, and then I was like, oh, okay, I'll dig this sprue out and give it a look and just see how will they paint up and what they're like. But yeah, let's have a look at this sprue, eh? Now, when the magazine came out, you got a choice of two sprues, depending on what one you wanted. You could either get the US Fireflies or the German Stahlstruppen. I'm sorry if I butchered that name. But yeah, I went with the Fireflies, and I've got to say, for a free sprue, this is absolutely loaded. So you get enough parts to make three soldiers. So you only get 3 torsos, but you got the variations of different leg poses and accessories like all the guns, all the pouches, loads of different options to make these troopers. So there's a lot of variety in this kit. I'd imagine when you get like the full boxed kit of these guys, if this is anything to go by, the amount of options you've got to make every soldier looking in your squad's unique, which I think's awesome. And there's a lot of flexibility for different poses as well. So like the fact where you've got the bodies like this and that's the legs, it reminds me of the old Warhammer kits where they're not all strict monopose where you can't do many conversions on them because they're all like parts are joined together, which I hate about the new kits, but that's another topic. But yeah, no, it's a pretty cool kit. So we're gonna make these guys. I'm not quite sure what variations I'm gonna go for yet. I'm gonna have a little flirt with the sprue and see what I can come up with. So here are the models glued together. Quick correction on my part, you get 6, not 3 on the sprue. I hadn't accounted for the torsos attached to the legs on some of them. So yeah, you get 6 and not 3. So here are the ones that I've made with the selection of the arms. So I've tried to keep it varied. I've got the 3 on the tactical rocks, which I think are awesome. Them hopping over. I've got the officer with his pistol and his map. A guy crouching with a Thompson. And another guy crouching with the Browning automatic rifle, the BAR. So yeah, it's my selection. There's a few other variations on there. Like I said, the sprue has enough on there where you can really have every person feel unique, imposing, which I think's awesome. It's really good. But yeah, for this video, we're going to be painting this guy with the BAR, because I love the look of this weapon, and it's the class that I play on Hell Let Loose. So yeah, I'm going to be painting that guy. So we're going to paint him up to a table ready standard, as if we're trying to get them ready for a game night. So I'll go from a process of how I'm going to paint this, which I will apply to all these models, and if you want to follow along, that's awesome. But yeah, let's get started. Okay, so to prime the model, I used two different colour forged primers. I used the Signature Series Red Crew Red and the Governor Green over the top as a zenithal to sort of speed things along and have an interesting shadow, and it will speed up the fatigue painting later on. So to start, I pick out all the levers on the model, and I wanted a paint that has like a nice red undertone to it. So I picked out the Citadel Colours range Rhinox Hide, and this is perfect for this because the Citadel colours have a nice glossy finish anyway, and when it dries it's got a nice red undertone to it, which is perfect because if you look at the old like paratrooper levers and stuff, they have that sort of red leather look to them. But yeah, I kept it simple here, just using the same Rhinox Hide on anything leather on the model, all the straps, anything at all. I even used it here for the buttstock of the rifle. I was like, there's no point getting out another brown here, just use what you got. Just being very careful. I mean, you can catch other areas on the model here, it wouldn't really matter for like the tidying up stage, but just try to be neat. But yeah, anywhere that needs the brown, I'll just fill it in. And then luckily, this brown's got really nice coverage as well, so it goes on pretty much kind of in one coat. You can get away with one coat with this if you want to, if you don't water it down too much. Don't use it straight from the pot, please don't. But yeah, now for the fatigues. I use the Pro Acryl Camo Green here, and I thin it down and start sketching over the top of the green primer, all the raised areas. And it's been very careful not to cover the red, because I want to keep that in shadow. The only red areas that I cover are the ones that have been missed by the initial priming spray. So you'll see in a minute with on the side of his leg. But anywhere fully red, just leave it alone and just do all the raised areas. Do all your highlights, because it dries really nice. This, it will need 2 coats at least if you're thinning it down. And you just pick out all those raised areas of the fabric, and you'll get a nice variation of like the dark green undertone for the primer, and then you'll get this as your highlights. I'm sorry if I'm butchering the terminologies here. But yeah, just being very careful now. And yeah, you'll see on the pouch here there's some red overspill from the spray, so I just neaten it up and go around with it. Areas that don't make sense to have that shadow, so there you go, you can see it, and it's got like a nice harsh difference between the red shadow and the green, and it complements each other. So now for the webbing, I had a little look and I was going to use some like Zandri dusts and stuff like that, but I decided to use Baneblade Brown from Citadel here, because it's got that sort of khaki yellow to it, but it's got like a nice little brown tone as well when it dries, and I thought that'd be perfect for the pouches on the model and all the webbing as well. So I decided to use that, and again it dries kind of glossy, this one. It does need 2 coats though, to be warned, so just apply a coat, move on, let it dry and apply your second coat, and you'll be fine. Now for the gun and anywhere else metal, I wanted to keep it simple, and I just used lead belcher, Citadel's lead belcher here. Any gunmetal would work, but lead belch is like my go-to paint. It's so versatile. You can add highlights to it if you want to brighten it up, like silvers and stuff like that. Dull it down with washes, which I plan to do. So if it looks a bit stark at the moment, don't worry. Trust the process. Yeah, I just picked out all the belts here. Anything sort of showing and obvious. Been very careful. Straight from the pot here, doesn't really matter. Your brush should be damp anyway at this process, so it should flow quite nicely off your brush. And then on the coils of the jetpack, just picking anything out. You can pick out as much detail as you want here or less, depending on what speed you want to go for to get them ready. Now, to start the jetpack itself, I used AK's Intense White from the starter set. Any bold white will do here, like titanium white, a Dallin Rowney one, anything would work here. But that's just what I had to hand. So started blocking in the exhaust fumes. I don't know what you want to call them. And the coil. It blows the camera out here. It's a very punchy white. This bit weird to say, but it is very good. It's good, great coverage. This AK paint. I'm very impressed by these. When my missus got these. But yeah, just block it in. One coat's fine. And then I move on to Pro-Acryl Blue. And I water it down here quite a bit. And I just apply it everywhere, over all the surfaces I painted white. And in the gaps of the jetpack as well. So just move it around and let it go where it wants to go. One coat is plenty here, because you will be covering up the layers later on with other blues. So don't overthink this, but it's a real quick, dirty way of doing a glow. You'll see in a minute. Just try not to manipulate the paint too much, because it will start drying pretty quick. And then once it's got that 5 seconds of drying on top of it, you'll push like a part of the layer of paint around, and a part will stay, and that's how you get that sort of weird, not smooth finish to it. So just be very careful. Just move it around. I was sort of thinking on the fly here of what I wanted to cover on the jetpack. I thought, okay, I'll just do the fumes first, and then I decided the whole thing. And then again, putting it on the coil over the top of him. Doesn't really matter as well if there's a bit of overspill, because it will just have like a bit of a, not OS, I suppose OSL, a bit of a glow effect. Try to be neat, obviously, but if it sort of spills onto the green, it's not the end of the world. It'll tint it, because I've thinned down the paint so much. Right, and why I had this out, I'd already blocked in the white on the shoulder pad, but I thought I'd do the blue now at this stage. Just be very careful. And then onto the red. So using the Pro-Acryl Bold Pyral Red, I very carefully fill in the gaps of the American patch on his shoulder. This is probably like the most nerve-wracking part, the paint job, filling this shoulder pad in. Especially the star later on, but you'll see. So after that, I used Citadel colour, how do you pronounce it? Baharaf Blue, that's the one. But any sort of sky blue would work here, but I like this one. And then started being very careful to pick out the coils and like the vents on the jetpack. Leaving the recesses in the dark blue. This will need 2 coats though, so be warned. And then you go through on the coil. Again, you don't want to do full coverage here. You want to show some of the dark blue underneath, so you leave the edges in dark blue, and it'll sell the dirty effect of a glow. It's not perfect, but to get them table ready for a game, nice and easy. And then once that's all dried, going back with the AK white, being even more careful, and smaller surface to work on, pick out the vents themselves, just the vents at first. One coat should be enough here, but you might need 2 smooth coats. I ended up needing 2 for some of it. And then here's where you start selling the glow. So you work smaller and smaller on the coils. So as you can see, you leave some of the sky blue showing, but then you have like a bit sort of central with the white. And you can see it sort of works its way up the jetpack, and it sells the effect of like they're glowing white hot. And these are the bits I think I needed the two coats on. And then here, just doing some little lines right down the centre of the coil springs, as if that's where the power is coming from, and it's just completely white hot there. You know, just as long as you have the layers of the different blues, to the eye, it will look like an OSL effect and like a nice glow. Oh yeah, I'll go back in here with the camo green from Acryl, because I looked at the grenade and I was like, there's something wrong with this. I just wanted to pick it out a bit. So I just dot like the little segments of the pineapple grenade, just to make them stand out. So, for the face, I wanted to keep this quick here, so what I started with was Acryl Tan Flesh. I wanted a real quick one or 2 coats of wash and some highlights and just call it done. So I used the Tan Flesh from Acryl, and I'd thinned this down a bit too much here, so it started to split. So just be warned with that with Acryl paints. If you water them down a bit too much, they can split on you. So I ended up doing two coats in the end for this. And then once it's all smooth coverage, I moved on to the gun for the wash while the paint was drying on his face. And it's just a good old known oil wash all over the metal, wicking it away where it's pooling and things, being very careful not to get it on the skin. And then once that dried, I'd flip straight back over to do the wash on the face. So I used the Vallejo Flesh Wash from the old Game Colour series that they had, the old pots I've still got. Just a nice smooth coat all over the face and the skin tones, being very careful to wick it away where you don't want it. You kind of want to aim for the eye sockets and like the mouth. And then I moved on to his hands as well, and the grooves of his hands. But just a nice smooth coverage here. Don't overload your brush in this stage, because otherwise it will just flood the model. You've got to be very careful. Very, very careful here. Just take your time. Just wick it away. And you can add multiple layers here if you feel like the coverage isn't too much. But it was perfect for what I'm looking for. And then once that had dried, I just went back in with the Tan Flesh again. Thinned it a bit down so it wasn't harsh. And then just picked out the cheeks, the nose, any of the raised surfaces very carefully though. You don't want to overdo it, and it just a nice quick face. I dotted the eyes with the Acryl blue because I had it on my palette. I was like, why not? I've already got it. There's no need to like bust out more paints just to dot an eye. And then I went in with the black, the AK Intense Black. Now, here is the most nerve-wracking part of the entire paint job, for me at least anyway, and that was freehanding this star on his pauldron. So, making sure you've got a nice damp brush and a pointy tip. The white paint is nice and thinned down as well. Just being very careful to just start sketching out the shape of the star. Just taking your time here. I mean, if you've got decals you can use, go for it, but I unfortunately didn't for this. So I had to do it by freehand. And yeah, just take your time. You can just shape the star as you go, cutting back in later if you need to. There's going to be a lot of ugly stages for this bit, so don't panic, just trust the process. Don't freak out. If you have to take a breather and go back into it, go for it. I was very happy with the one attempt that I'd done. I just left it at that. But yeah, now for the base, home stretch. So I had a lot of thought about what I wanted to do for the base here to keep it simple, but also have a bit of character to it as well. And I decided I wanted to have the squad in sort of a flooded field, sort of like the flooded fields from Normandy, France, during World War Two. So I painted the entire base with the Rhinox hide because I had it on my palette already. So I was like, why not? Just use what I've got, make sure there's nice coverage. And then I went in with this camo green again because I still had it on my palette. So I decided to use that for like the swampy sort of look, the boggy, swampy, marshy sort of look of the fields. I just decided to start wet blending the colours together. So I just put pools of the camo green down, smudge it out a bit. It didn't really matter about the shape or coverage because a lot of it's going to get covered with tufts and things anyway. But then blending it together with the browns. Some mixed more than others. It didn't really matter. It'd all sell the effect. And just go around the model, putting these patches down. Doesn't really matter if the paints are mixed on your brush. Just be careful not to get the paint in the ferrule of your brush if you're doing stuff like this. Even a cheap burner brush would be good for this section if you were worried about your fancy brushes. So just go around mixing it all together. Just making sure it all sort of sells the effect of like a muddy, swampy field. Now once that had dried, I busted out my Gamer Grass tufts. So I've got a few different sizes out for here. I've got my swamp ones out, and using my pink and black tweezers, very sexy, I decided to start putting the tufts down in places. Now these Gamer Grass tufts I absolutely love because they come in various different shapes and sizes. So if you've got models like, for example, this guy crouching and you need a tuft that shapes around his leg, you know, chances are it's going to be on this, in this box with them. But yeah, just going around, squishing them down, finding all the gaps and just looking, seeing what ones I can use. And then once I was happy with that, I moved over to the dark moss 2mm ones here, which has got a different colour, different shapes, different sizes, and just smushing more on the base around him to sort of sell the effect he's like crouching in this field of grass that's flooded. Being quite liberal here, I was like, I've got plenty of tufts, you know, it's just no issue of like going over the board. Now for the resin. First things first, don't do what I'm doing here. I kept this clip in just to show you my mistake. I tried to apply the AK Interactive Still Water straight from the bottle on this model, and I realised no, it's too small, it's too finicky, and I need more control. So what I did, put it in this dry palette, and using a really cheap arts and crafts brush, just used that to apply it everywhere on the model. Now anywhere that didn't have a tuft, I wanted this resin, so I just went around very carefully here, applying it in all these places, just being very careful not to get it in the sides of the base of the model or on the model itself. It wouldn't really matter if you got it on the boots of the model, because again he's crouched in this boggy wet field, so it would look alright, but anything other than his boots, it's not going to look right on him. So just being very careful just to push it into all the gaps. See, luckily as well with this resin, it helps lock the tufts down on the base. I didn't use any glue on the tufts, I just used the sticky backs of them and pushed them down. So when this dries, it locks those tufts in, absolutely locks them down. So just to save a bit of time in the process. But yeah, just going around, applying this in all those gaps. Just taking my time here. Constantly looking around the model to see what bits I've missed. If you wanted deeper water here, you'd have to make sure it's dried before adding more layers, because otherwise it won't look right. It'll pull. But yeah, I was very happy with the results. And I suppose it's time for a nice grand reveal. So thank you for watching my first look into Konflikt 47. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you'd like to see more of me exploring Konflikt 47 and potentially other historicals in the future like Bolt Action and like Napoleonics for example, let me know down below. I had a lot of fun painting something not in my wheelhouse that I'm used to. I'm so used to like sci-fi models and Warhammer Fantasy models and like D&D and stuff like that, so I had a lot of fun pushing myself for this and sort of keeping it down to a tight painting schedule to sort of be tabletop ready. I don't claim to be an expert on historical accuracy as well, so I'm sorry if I messed anything up through the video, but I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please consider liking and subscribing. There'll be more coming soon and it helps me out massively. And until then, look after yourselves.